Hello everyone and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Well, last time we had a pretty successful mission. We managed to land on Gilly and get back, completing a mission. We did have some mistakes. Me losing the launch footage was a bit of a pain. And on top of that, the whole forgetting to put solar panels on the probes was not the best move ever. Anyway, let's jump back in. So our next main track mission is to enter the atmosphere of Eve. So we can definitely pick that one up. Don't have to have any people in it, so that is no problem at all. I don't think any of the other missions fit in particularly well. We could certainly do some, but they're all going to make the mission much more complicated, and I've already got in mind what I want to do for this. Because what I'd love to do is be able to land on the surface of Eve and then send a probe back with the scientific data. Well, for our new mission, let's take a look at what science we can get. We've got 8,900 science. Should do us really well here. I'm going to start off by grabbing ion propulsion. Don't know if we're going to use ion propulsion, but it's worth having a go at. It's got automation, gives us some new communication options, which will be useful. Might as well grab the very heavy rocketry, some really big cores that we can put on. And let's grab the matching fuel tanks, grab advanced unmanned tech, specialized electronics. I'm just going to run down and grab everything in this tier. And we've got enough for 3 of these. Going to grab the lower 3 since I'm not planning on doing a Rapier engine today. May well try and do a single stage to orbit some other point. Again, we're only just shy of having what we need for the very final tech. So I'm going to spend some cash on upgrading our admin building. Okay, so we need a lot of science to be able to deploy this. Well, that's fine, because we're just about maxed out on science. So what I'm going to do after this is get patents licensing, so then all of our then unneeded science is being converted into large amounts of funds. Okay, so let's get started on this. Put down a core. The most important part of the stage is going to be the science return module. That's what all of this is about. This thing is going to come jetting back to Kerbal, so it's going to need a heat shield. There is RCS in the core, so I don't need to add any additional RCS. It's going to need a battery, not going to forget the batteries this time. A pair of solar panels on. Extendable solar panels on the side. We'll need to remember to put fuel communication on in a second. Okay, so if we can get this thing out of Eve's atmosphere and a fair bit away from Eve, this should have enough delta V to make it easily back to Kerbal on its own. So it can take the science, it's got power, got the ability to generate power, got communications, it's got its heat shield. It needs a parachute. That would be very helpful. Yeah, just a pair of parachutes. That will get it back in one piece. Here's the theory. Okay, so now I need to build a stage designed to get this out of Eve's atmosphere. Problem is, that requires 8,000 delta V. Hence why I've been keeping this stage really, really small. Okay, this gives us about 7,000, which should be enough to get this stage, the top little stage, well out of the atmosphere. It's not enough to circularize its orbit, but I don't need to do that. I need to fire this thing straight up, because I'm just going to try and break Eve's gravity well. Okay, I can't use this engine. There's no thing on the bottom, so I'll just change the engine around. Actually gives us a little bit more delta V, but not enough thrust to weight ratio. Okay, so this is what I've arrived at. It's a reasonable-ish. It's so heavy, I don't think this is going to work. But it's the thing. Right, we're going to be dumping the science bay off. The more I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking this just isn't going to work. And this is my design so far. This would be able to take off from Eve, but then I've got to somehow put this into orbit or get it to Eve in the first place. which is going to require a ridiculous amount of delta V. Even if I just dock this with my space stage, I'm not even sure if I can get this into Kerbal orbit. It's going to end up ballooning to being a massive, massive cost. So I think I may need to abandon the idea of actually returning from Eve at this point. So okay, that's not going to work out. Fine. So we're going to simplify our plan in some respects, but I think some things are going to get a bit more complicated. So I don't think doing a return from the surface of Eve is really on the cards for this one. It's just turning out to be too big, too complex. Really, it's one of the hardest things you can do in KSP, and so probably not the best thing to be doing for the second, or the very first planet we're landing on. But I still want to get these two, so we just have to enter the atmosphere for this one. This one we just have to get to the surface, so if we abandon the whole taking off from Eve, getting down to Eve is nice and straightforward. And since we're simplifying that, we may be able to add a couple of these other missions just to bring in some more money to give us a little bit more wiggle room. Okay, yeah, got a load here that we can pick up. So one, getting these gravimetric surveys, I've just taken a look at where they are. We won't be able to do them with an equatorial orbit, but if we get into a polar orbit, we can just wait at above the atmosphere and then just slowly collect all of these as we cross, so that should be fine. Gonna pick up this one here, so we put a Sentinel infrared telescope in orbit of the Sun, have it pick up 2 comets. And this one, we've got a very specific orbit that we need to get this set up in, but once we do, we just need to have a Sentinel telescope there, and it just needs to map 20 asteroids. So we can just stick that out there near Eve and just see what we pick up. So it's fine, all we need is some probes, and I'm also going to put some communication probes in there and have the space stage double as a large communication point. So to kick things off, let's put together our core. So this is what's going to be landing. I'm just going to put a load of science on this. Not going to bother with the magnemeter because we can't use that within the atmosphere, but everything else can be whacked on. Got double communication systems, big ass battery to last through the night. Okay, so this is the lander, possibly a little bit over-engineered. It is missing parachutes, which is really not a good thing. Gonna whack those on. So here we go, now we've got parachutes on it. So we've got large solar panels which we can deploy and retract. Got the backup solar panels, the probe core is in there with all of the sciencey bits. We've got 2 transmitters and a backup transmitter inside, landing legs, and then this is going to be the heat shield for the entire vessel because very nicely it can massively inflate. And I've also got a jettison ready right there. I can actually simplify this a bit because I can just jettison the heat shield as a command. The idea is we're going to go in head first because this is going to be the top of the rocket, and so it's probably going to be easier to go in with this one. Then we'll detach, stabilize the other stage. This has just enough thrust to then deorbit itself and go in for a proper landing with this. So we'll do a bit of an aero capture, keeping the altitude quite high, just to give us some free delta V on slowing down, and then this is going to go and do its business. Okay, with that set, now I need to put together the space stage to get this thing to Eve. That stage has a huge amount more delta V. I keep forgetting to enable the vacuum mode, so this has plenty of delta V. We just need to get the other stage vaguely in orbit, and then this can quite happily dock. I mostly added the extra fuel stage just to have room to put on things like solar panels, so that's no big loss. I'm giving this section its own probe core and solar panels, and it is going to be a big relay, so I'm giving it really big little sensor things, transmitters, and then this whole thing is going to be deploying 2 different types of probes. Yeah, so these are the first type of probes I'm equipping. These are the Sentinel probes, the ones that look out for incoming asteroids and highlight them. Otherwise, they're really quite simple, just some batteries. I'm suddenly doubting whether the batteries have through power, so I'm going to rearrange some stuff here. Just in case the batteries didn't have any throughput power. Now that should be no problem. So they've got solar panels, communication, ion engines, which have awful thrust, but huge amounts of efficiency. It should be fine for getting this tiny probe just to make orbital adjustments. Or so I'm hoping. There we go, then even smaller, we've got these little things, which are just communication satellites I'm going to throw up around Eve. Shorter range, but with the idea that they can relay to the main satellite. I just realised those are not relay. That's not the end of the world, we can just put these on. They are now relay satellites. Yeah, that should be more than enough Delta V, so we've got some to spare from if we get a not particularly good burn, which is entirely possible given how things have gone previously. Now I just need to get all of this to a Kerbal escape velocity. Well, actually just Kerbal orbit will be fine. I think here we have a finished design. Should be more than enough just to go straight up, get out of Kerbal, get us the intercept, dumping one of these satellites off in solar orbit, dumping the other one off after we've got the Eve intercept trajectory, getting closer, dumping 2 communication satellites over Eve, and then we're dropping off the main stage. Should all be good. It is all strutted together. Yeah, so here we have the Wish, the worrying interplanetary ship, heavy, because it is a rather big one. It is cheaper than our last version. Not hugely cheaper, to be fair, but it's got a very different job. All in all, I think I'm happy with that. Your KSP center is now facing retrograde with respect to Kerbal's orbit of the Sun, so I should just be able to burn straight out, go for escape directly. And hear weird sounds, it's my cat trying to destroy the chair next to me. Okay, well, there's nothing else for it but to try and launch this thing. So, SAS on, engines to full, fingers crossed, and let's burn. We're just going to go straight up here. There's no need to orbit, no need to circularize. We are just going to continue on this course until we exit Kerbal's sphere of influence, or at least reach escape velocity. I'm, however, going to rotate us by 90 degrees, just so those 2 booster stages come out away from the main facilities. Okay, booster stage flame out, separation, nice and perfect there, no issues at all. Okay, a little bit of flexing just as it's changed from surface to orbit, prograde, and then gently bring it back over. I think I want to be heading a little bit more west than east. Okay, so far so good. We're looking at 200k apoapsis so far. Okay, and stage 8, flame out, separate, ignite burner, turn us back true, prograde here. We can get rid of the flaring, no need for that, just a little bit of added weight, which means we can deploy solar panels now. Apo is getting close to the moon's orbit. Where it gets, the faster it moves out. See it really accelerating away now. And there we go. Reached escape velocity. Still got a little bit of fuel left, which is all very useful. First thing we're going to do is time warp, just so now we're no longer in Kerbal's sphere of influence. Then what we're going to do is drop off one of our panels, one of our probes. So for safety I'm going to withdraw that solar panel. Also going to withdraw these two solar panels, just because they are very fragile. I'm however going to extend the antenna and then decouple that node. And we can just jump over to this, extend the two solar panels, and start object tracking. There you go, anything passing near Kerbin's orbit is being tracked. And it can transmit the data it's got so far. Nice. That is one safety probe away. So this is the Kerbal Sentinel. Sentinel. This means it'll work on an Eve orbit. Okay, the other probe apparently needs to be all the way down here. That's rather surprising, but fine. Okay, we've got a burn here. 620 delta V, which we'll use at this stage, use a tiny bit of the next stage. That'll get us within about 100 of the planet. But that burn is not going to be for another year and 285 days, so time to fast forward a fair bit. Okay, we're here in position, time to begin the burn. Okay, that stage is out. On to the much weaker stage. I've got an ever so slightly different orbit here, but this should still be absolutely fine. This, when it's circularized, should still be south enough to capture all of these sites. So I think we should be in a good shape. Just going to drop our Perry down to 80. That was far too far. I just want an ever so gentle aero braking maneuver. Gonna have to massively thrust limit this thing. I don't have any RCS on it. So my plan is we get into outer edge of Eve. Gonna kick off one of the communication probes and put that in a orbit. Then we're going to try doing our aero brake to hopefully at least partially circularize round Eve. Then I'm going to kick out the second probe, and then just going to try and see if I can keep on a course that lets us grab these. At least that's the plan. Let's see how it goes. On the bright side, we've completed one of the missions. That probe that we fired off beforehand has already detected 2 new comets. Okay, so here we are, 3 days from Periapsis. Can ditch one of the communication satellites. Oh, you're joking. These fuel tanks aren't xenon fuel tanks. That's why it wasn't showing as any delta V. Damn it, so none of my probes have fuel. Oops. Well, we accidentally just sent a probe here. Never mind. So we can get into orbit, fire off the other probes. We'll have at least one in orbit. This one is going to be in a near Eve orbit. Or it might actually burn up in Eve. I think it is actually on a collision course. Yeah, very much on a collision course. That probe's lost. Oh, well, made a mistake. Can't be having an episode without some kind of mistake in it. Okay, well, lesson learned. If the delta V calculation isn't showing, it's probably because I've done something wrong. Okay, so the idea is we dip into the atmosphere, slow down as much as we can, or at least slow down a little bit in the atmosphere. Then once all of that is done, we are going to do an actual braking maneuver, circularize ourselves, chuck out the other probe, and then get ready to actually land the main stage. Okay, well, solar panels are all retracting now, and we are going to inflate the heat shield. Put ourselves surface retrograde, and fingers crossed nothing explodes. Okay, we've hit Perry, we are back on our way up. We bled off a tiny bit of speed, not much, but we didn't really need much. We've got plenty of fuel in the other stages. Okay, we are back out the atmosphere, so I'm going to turn retrograde. Good to know I can't refold down the heat shield once it's deployed. Alright, I'm going to begin our braking maneuver. I do not have signal. So we're in the blind spot, and this is why I was hoping to have another satellite out. So there we go, we acquired signal. Now we can begin our braking maneuver. Really just want to get this circularized and nothing more. Okay, then just gonna get the other end out of the atmosphere, and I can fire off one of the other communication probes, which will hopefully then be able to give us some actual help with all of this. I'm rather confused here. I'm burning prograde, it's decreasing Perry. Very unusual. I'm just going to put that at 110 just in case anything breaks. Alright, and that's this communication probe we're launching. And we're away. A tiny little maneuver just to make this into more of a polar orbit. Yay. And then I'm going to decouple the lander stage. Something fired off very rapidly outside there. Hope that was nothing important. Yeah, maybe I'll pick up one of these scans on this pass. Depends how accurately over the site I need to be. I don't think that counted. That's fine. What we're going to do then is drop our orbit a little bit again, go in for another braking pass, and I'm going to need to massively thrust limit this engine. I'm just hugely overshot there. Alright, definitely not going to pass over any of the targets this round, but that's fine. Yep, and I want to be pointing prograde, not retrograde. Let's withdraw the solar panels just to be safe. That pass worked quite well. Drop the orbit from all the way out here, all the way down there. Getting us much closer to these scannable sites. Our second pass, even better, down to 5 million. Still not passing over any of these just yet. Oh, another one, now down to 3. Another one, down to 2. Oh, that's good. Keep going round. Down to 1 million. Maybe just one more pass. Yeah, we've got enough that we can circularize on engines now, so that is going to be my plan. Push us up a little bit above the atmosphere with our first maneuver, and then our next maneuver, bring that down for a nice about 100 kilometer orbit. There you go, nice circular orbit, all ready to come down whenever we choose to. Let's see if we can get these scanning sites first. Okay, we got one of them, got Kraken's Recklessness. Okay, got the second one, C0. Okay, we're not getting that one on this run. Okay, got the FQN one to go. Damn it, missed this one again. It's just pure luck whether we get it or not each time the planet rotates around. The orbit seems to be just perfectly out of sync on this one, so I'm never quite getting there, so I am going to adjust orbit a tiny bit. It's going to raise the Perry here just a smidge. Yeah, just to see if that's enough to break us out of being perfectly out of phase. There we go, got the last one. Perfect. Now I've got the choice of where I want to deorbit, and I think I want to deorbit over here so that we're facing both relay satellites. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a retrograde burn just to lower our periapsis down to 50 kilometers. Hopefully that will be enough to let us re-enter here. If not, then I'll just go round again. Point prograde, one of our comm antenna out. Track the other one, and I'll withdraw the solar panels just as we're starting to enter the atmosphere. Here I've got good signal. Orbit's already decayed to 40. Yeah, looks like we're definitely going to be re-entering, so the only issue is can we bleed off this speed without baking? Perry is now negative, we are definitely re-entering. Hopefully we'll have enough to get somewhat into the sun side. I do have plenty of electric charge, so it's not a problem if we don't. We can just wait till a different time of year. If this isn't an ablative heat shield, I don't know how it works, so I can't tell if it's about to explode or not. I'm assuming I'm going to get a warning bar if it is approaching there. We'll just have to see. Already bled off nearly 1,000 delta V, so it's looking good. Okay, the antenna I had deployed is broken. That's fine, that's why I had the other one. Still got decent signal with the inbuilt antenna. Looks like we're exiting heating effect. Yeah, going through Mach effect. Okay, we don't need the heat shield anymore, so I can jettison it. Then I can try and flip us around and deploy our parachutes. Yeah, there we go, separated from the heat shield, which was acting as a really quite good brake, but I am trying to land the other way around, so I didn't really want it there as a heat shield. I just encountered the kraken there. As the parachutes extended, everything just vaporized because I was in time warp. So I'll be going back a little bit there. And just to show it definitely was a weird kraken-y bug there. This is actually the section that remains of it. It is flying away at 760,000 meters per second. Which is pretty impressive, to be honest with you. It is on a escape trajectory out of the solar system. Oh, Kerbal. Yeah, so to try and avoid the catastrophic breakup due to weird physics whatsits, meeting things at the speed of light, I am going to get the parachutes to deploy in 250 meter intervals, totally lower the physics load, and also won't be physics warping when I enter that 1,000 kilometer range. Whereas I do want to jettison and get rid of the heat shield, mostly because it's forcing my ship to land upside down, and I don't want that. There we go. Did my version of jettisoning the heat shield rock off of the damn thing. Alright, there we go. I can warp until I'm a little bit closer. Eve sun rays is really quite pretty. Here we go. Yeah, the first one's deployed, that should be absolutely fine. Actually, just to be safe, I'm going to cut the other two, we don't need them. So we're just going to come down under these two parachutes, that will be more than slow enough, and that means no more physics bumpery. Here we go. And Kerbal's still being Kerbal, this thing is vibrating like mad. I'm not sure why, it seems to be wanting to migrate across the ground, but anyway. Okay, so if we transmit data, that is our mission. Successful. May as well transmit what else we have here. So I haven't really landed on the poles. Okay. Lug blew off. Fine. Only crushed one of the solar panels. Communication is still intact, so this is absolutely fine. We've transmitted all the data we need to anyway. So there we go. We managed to do our mission. Just before we stop, I'm going to see if I can get this probe into orbit. Now that we've decoupled, this has 4,000 delta V on it. So if we can get this entire unit into that correct orbit that we needed for the mission, which is not displaying for some reason. If we get the correct orbit though, we should then be able to get the mission, just basically using this thing as a tug to move the Sentinel array into position. And the first part of that is we need to leave Eve's orbit, which is one of the reasons why I left this in such a weird orbit here, is it should be quite easy for us to escape. There we go. Just 4 meters per second burn, hardly anything. Even though we're putting this into a bit of a weird orbit, it's not a bad thing having a relay near the sun. Here we've escaped Eve, and now this is showing us our orbit that we need to achieve. Okay, so we are perfectly on the right inclination, so it just needs to be an Eve inclination. That is perfect. It looks like we should be able to. This should be able to get close. This is going to be the closest to the sun we've come so far. I hope heating isn't going to be an issue. It is having to fight a little bit because of a very uneven load at this point. The mass of this is now quite significant compared to the mass of the whole thing. Yeah, it looks like we do have the Delta V, so well, let's get to it. One more burn should put us into position. Okay, there we go, we've got the minimal deviation. So that is all set up. We don't need to eject this thing, we just need to turn it on. Start object tracking. There we go, so that's going to start tracking objects. And that will just start ticking up over time. Perfect. Well, all in all, I think that was one hell of a success. Let's just check our messages. So we did complete that 2 comets detection while we're on our way to Eve. First suborbital spaceflight, first atmosphere of Eve. We've also landed on Eve for the first time. Got our various gravimetric surveys, and a massive cash payout for doing all of them. And we've finally got that surface science data from Eve. Okay, we'll just have to look and see what we're going to do next time. The next mission, it is prompting, involves walking on the surface of Eve, which that would be a one-way trip for any Kerbal, so maybe might go park a research base on Eve, but we'll just have to see. Might do some other missions instead, see what else we've got going on. But otherwise, our balance is looking a lot better than it was at the start of the episode. Science is looking really good, so definitely happy with all that. If you enjoyed that, please do leave a like and or a comment, it really does help. And otherwise, I hope to catch you in the next video. Until then, remember to be kind to yourself and everyone else. Cheers!